Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Rights group reports appalling torture of Syrian children. Kuwait's highest court rejects election law challenged by government. And pro-Israel subway ads in New York City equate Muslims with savages. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
Official Syrian TV said that 7 people were injured in an explosion that it described as terrorism at the headquarters of the Sons of Martyrs School in the capital Damascus. Websites for the Syrian opposition uploaded pictures of what it said was an explosion that targeted the security headquarters near the Palestine branch of Syrian military intelligence. Local coordination committees said that the number of deaths from gunfire by government forces reached 84, mostly in Damascus and its countryside Aleppo and Daraa. Opponents reported shelling that targeted neighborhoods in Deir al-Zur and led to deaths and injuries. According to a new report released today by Save the Children Foundation, the children of Syria are being subjected to horrific acts of torture, arrest, and kidnapping, and it called for better documentation of these violations. The report by Save the Children, the headquarters of which are in Britain, was based on stories from children in refugee camps at the Syrian border who were able to flee the ongoing conflict in their country. Last week, the Security Council discussed violations against children in armed conflicts and made a decision to condemn the violations and call for the children's protection. It was a decision on which Russia and China did not vote.
In the al-Zaatari camp on the Jordanian side of the Syrian border, workers from the Save the Children Foundation collected children's stories. They published their report, which included testimonies of torture, arrest, kidnapping, and other acts of violence.
I was happy in Syria. I used to play soccer and other games. And then the violence began. At the beginning, they used tanks. Then the air raids and rocket shelling began. And all the weapons you can think of. They killed us.
Most children here faced difficult situations.
Telling us of their school being bombed.
They are telling us about their schools, which have been bombed, and the tanks that destroyed their homes, or about their relatives who were killed by the military, or their homes being raided at night, or watching their siblings or fathers get shot. They are telling us about children who are not even 10 years old being tortured in prison, with their nails getting pulled or their fingers getting cut off. This is horrific, and it must stop now.
The organization's report intensified international concerns about the effects of the conflict in Syria on children. This discussion reached the Security Council a few days ago. The Council made a decision to condemn all violations of international law against children and called for their protection. Although the Security Council's decision did not exclusively specify Syria, the Syrian crisis played a big part in the discussion. The United Nations Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict, Leila Zarougi, announced to the Council that the situation of Syrian children is painful, and that international workers have documented the government's attacks on schools and children being prevented from reaching hospitals, as well as being subjected to torture. The violence practiced against Syrian children had been previously addressed in reports by Human Rights Watch, which held the Syrian government more accountable for these violations, but did not exempt the armed opposition from the suspicion of arming children in acts of war. Children do not have a voice in what is happening in Syria, with its uprising, war, and armed conflict, yet they are definitely its most innocent victims. Wa'el Hajar, BBC.
Kuwaitis have had their eyes on the deliberations by the Kuwaiti Constitutional Court. In the court's conclusion today, it rejected the appeal presented by the government with regard to the 5 voting districts. The Kuwaiti government had asked the Constitutional Court last August to issue a ruling regarding a law that would have divided the country into 5 voting districts. The opposition saw this as an attempt to organize the voting districts in a manner that would suit the desires of the government, where the voting power held by the opposition is concentrated in the smallest number of areas possible, and would once again deny the opposition a majority in the next parliament. We remain in Kuwait and are joined there by our correspondent, Ahmed al-Lanezi. Ahmed, how did Kuwaitis receive the Constitutional Court's rejection of the government's appeal?
Yes,
Faisal. Kuwaitis received this long-awaited ruling today with great impatience. The ruling preceded much of the political mobilization, sit-ins and protests in Arada Square and other areas. The opposition today is in the best shape after this ruling. They sighed in relief because the ruling was, perhaps, very much in tune with their demands. It was not what they had feared, which was a ruling in tune with the government's desires. But I believe, and observers believe, that the ruling today dispelled any rumours that were spread, in which the judiciary would align itself in one form or another to the government and what it desires in this regard. Perhaps even those who were not awaiting the ruling with the opposition came out welcoming it, as it represented a strong shift for the Constitutional Court, which one of the sides here in Kuwait wanted to spread doubt about in one form or another.
Ahmed, what steps will follow the court's decision?
The next step, whatever its shape, will be in the hands of the Prince. The Kuwaiti Prince here is the one in charge of dismissing the 2009 Assembly, which was also formed by Constitutional Court ruling. What is expected, what observers expect, is the dissolution of the 2009 Assembly and a call for new parliamentary elections in which the public is called upon to choose their representatives from members of the National Assembly for a new assembly, which perhaps will be different, or perhaps similar, in one form or another, to the current assembly, which includes several opposition political parties.
Our correspondent, Ahmed al-Lanezi from Kuwait. Thank you very much.
In the US, the pro-Israel American Freedom Defense Initiative published ads in 10 subway stations in New York that describe jihad in Islam as an act of barbarism.
The New York Transportation Authority had failed to prevent the ads after a court in the city rejected its request last July. The ad caused mixed reactions among Americans.
This poster, which is spread to subway stations in New York, will remain for an entire month. It reads, "In any war between the civilized man and the savage, support the civilized man, support Israel, defeat jihad." American Muslims tried to counter the ad with other propaganda methods.
We are trying to unify instead of divide. We are trying to spread awareness in place of ignorance. The war is between the barbaric and the civilized, between ignorance and knowledge, and between beauty and ugliness.
Although some Americans defended the poster under the banner of freedom of speech, others rejected it because of the bad message it sends.
I think it's offensive towards everybody.
I think it is offensive towards everybody because it promotes hate. I know the ad is under the guise of freedom of speech, but it is still hate.
But it's still hate.
And similar to Dill's opinion was this British tourist's thoughts.
I find it incredibly offensive. I find it
incredibly offensive. It is a racist ad that I see as a call for non-coexistence. It is frightening for this horrible and offensive language to tell lies about other people.
To tell lies about other people.
Some Americans fear that the ad causes societal divisions.
It's a bad idea, and it really raises controversy when it categorizes some as barbaric and others as civilized.
Some defended the ad under the freedom of speech, but this freedom, which affects religions and has caused the loss of life, faces those who advocate for placing limits to stop it at the beliefs and the humanity of others. And despite this, an American court allowed such an ad to be published, rejecting the transportation authorities' attempts to prevent it.
Afghanistan welcomed the American Defense Department's decision to try 2 Marines who were recorded urinating on the bodies of dead Afghans.
This comes 1 month after 3 other soldiers from the American Navy who were involved in the same act faced disciplinary charges. This act stirred up anger on the Afghan street. An Afghan spokesman asserted the importance of bringing all those who committed illegal acts to justice, whether in the United States or Afghanistan.
Civilians in northwestern Pakistan are being terrorized 24 hours a day by the threat of CIA drone attacks. That's what a U.S. report says. The law schools of Stanford University and New York University have jointly conducted a study on the human impact of the U.S. controversial drone activity. The report says drones flying overhead lead to substantial levels of fear and stress in Pakistan's rural communities. It says apart from the heavy casualties resulting from the attacks, there's also plenty of property damage, severe economic hardships and emotional trauma. Washington conducts drone operations in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia and Yemen. In the latest such strike, at least 5 people lost their lives in Pakistan's North Waziristan. Also in the news today, another Shia cleric detained in Saudi Arabia. Sheikh Hussein Radi was arrested at his home in the kingdom's eastern province. Activists say he's likely to have been detained for taking part in last week's protests against a film insulting Islam's prophet. Nearly 2 months ago, another Shia cleric, Sheikh Nimr al-Nimr, was also arrested, also in eastern province. There's still no word on his whereabouts. Hundreds of people have been detained by the Saudi regime in eastern province since opposition protests erupted there last year. Meanwhile, police have imprisoned a number of protesters in the central province of Qasim. They were protesting near a prison, demanding the release of their relatives held behind bars. U.S. President Barack Obama starts his address to the UN General Assembly by paying tribute to the U.S. ambassador killed in Libya. In his speech, Obama said Chris Stevens embodied the best of America. He also rejected the movie against Islam that led to the violence and the violence itself.
As a crude and disgusting video sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video, and I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity. It is an insult not only to Muslims, but to America as well. But in 2012, at a time when anyone with a cell phone can spread offensive views around the world with a click of a button, the notion that we can control the flow of information is obsolete. And the question then is, how do we respond? And on this, we must agree. There is no speech that justifies mindless violence.
Talking about Iran's nuclear energy program, Obama said that he would like to resolve the issue through diplomacy. He said there is still time and space to do so, but the time is not unlimited. Speaking about the Israeli-Palestinian issue, he called for a secure Jewish state of Israel along with an independent Palestine. Now, the UN Secretary-General calls for global action to end the unrest in Syria. At the opening ceremony of the 67th General Assembly, Ban Ki-moon said the Syrian crisis is a calamity that threatens world peace. He called on member states to support the efforts of UN Arab League envoy Lakhdar Brahimi. On the issue of Palestine, he said the two-state solution is the only viable option. The UN Secretary-General also added that Israel's settlement activities remain a great obstacle in continuing talks between the two sides.
Hundreds of mourners were in Modi'in this morning for the funeral of IDF Corporal Netanel Yahalomi, who was killed along the Egyptian border on Friday. The 20-year-old artillery corps soldier from Nov Ayalon was shot by terrorists as he and his unit were giving water to African migrants who had arrived on the border. The second soldier was wounded in the attack and is recovering in the hospital. Following that attack, the IDF today instructed soldiers to be more cautious when dealing with migrants. In the meantime, a jihadist group called Ansar Beit al-Maqdis claimed responsibility for the terror attack, saying it was carried out to protest the anti-Islamic video that sparked Muslim riots worldwide. Security issues dominated today's cabinet meeting, with ministers discussing the violence on the Egyptian border and the Iranian drive to obtain nuclear weapons. This was the final cabinet meeting before Prime Minister Netanyahu heads to the UN General Assembly. IBA reporter Aryeh O'Sullivan has been following developments.
Speaking at the beginning of the cabinet meeting this morning, Netanyahu was quick to praise the action of the combat troops, both male and female, whose quick action prevented a larger attack by Salafi terrorists last Thursday, which claimed the life of an Israeli soldier. But he also followed that with a pat on the cabinet's collective back, saying the attack demonstrated the importance of the decision by them to set up a security barrier along the border with the Sinai Peninsula. Without the barrier on the frontier, Israel would have been flooded with illegal workers and terrorist squads, he said. With such formidable security arrangements, ministers voiced their opposition to any attempt by Egypt to demand changes in the peace treaty between the two countries to allow them to flood more troops to the Sinai. Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman said there is no chance that Israel will agree to make changes in the Camp David Accords with Egypt. Infrastructure Minister Uzi Landau echoed this sentiment.
All those like us who want to have peace don't want to have any change in an agreement that has been successful for over 30 years. And all of the necessary tools are in this agreement in order to combat terror as much as is needed. What was lacking in the past was the necessary resolve. If it will be there, no need to change anything. Those who want to have peace have to stick to this agreement, to the letter and to the spirit of it.
Moving to the coming days, Netanyahu said that he intends to remind the world again, when he addresses the UN General Assembly, that Iran is the world's most dangerous nation and cannot be allowed to obtain the world's most dangerous weapons. Netanyahu will be leaving for New York on Wednesday night, just after Yom Kippur, and is expected to address the General Assembly on Thursday, a day after Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is scheduled to deliver his own UN speech. The Iranian leader departed for New York today. Speaking before his departure, Ahmadinejad said he hoped to discuss at the UN regional issues such as the violence in Syria, as well as the UN reform. In the past, he has used the platform to deny the Holocaust. This could be the last address Ahmadinejad makes at the UN before he completes his term as president next year. The Iranian leader plans to meet with American university students and give interviews to major media networks while in the United States. Netanyahu told his cabinet that he has meetings scheduled with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, who recently ordered his country to sever ties with Iran, and with U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The Palestinians will once again be pressing the General Assembly to accept their call for recognition of statehood. So with the issues of Syria, Iran, and the Palestinians high on the agenda, it is certain that Prime Minister Netanyahu will have a lot to discuss. Aryeh O'Sullivan for IBA News.
The United States must change its approach toward the Arab world and help build a Palestinian state. That's the view of Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi, who told the New York Times that if Washington wants his country to honor its treaty with Israel, it must live up to its own Camp David commitment to Palestinian self-rule, signed in 1978. It was supposed to make way for a full Palestinian sovereignty. Morsi went on to say that if there is no justice for the Palestinians, the Camp David Treaty is unfulfilled. The Egyptian leader travels today to New York to take part in the United Nations General Assembly. When asked whether he considers the U.S. to be an enemy or an ally, Morsi said that he envisions the two nations becoming real friends. A major crime scheme involving kidnapping Eritrean migrants and then extorting their families in Israel to pay a ransom was revealed by police today. Authorities said 4 suspects from Netanya were arrested for involvement in the plot, in which the suspects allegedly tried to extort $15,000 from the victims' families. Also arrested was an alleged Hamas operative in East Jerusalem who is suspected of transferring funds to Hamas in Gaza. The kidnappings took place on August 25th when the family of a migrant was approached and told that they had to pay the ransom within 2 days or the hostage would be killed.
With the attendance of political and national figures, the General Union of Palestinian Women held a sit-in in the city of Gaza to demand an end to the division between the Hamas and Fatah movements. The demonstrators stated that the division harms the Palestinian cause and benefits the Israeli entity. They called on the sides involved in the reconciliation to get the stalled process moving.
In order to end the unconstructive efforts in this chapter of the Palestinian reconciliation issue, and with a call by the General Union of Palestinian Women, as well as the participation of several influential national figures, Palestinians held a sit-in in front of the legislature in Gaza City. They delivered a message to both the Hamas and Fatah movements, demanding that they put the reconciliation process in motion and give up their division.
Why remain silent? Why not tell everyone in a leadership position, enough, enough, enough? This division is deadly for everyone. This division serves no one except the enemy. It only serves the Israeli occupation. Why are we walking down the path of division? Why do we remain in this division? If we were to unite and speak in one voice, we would be able to accomplish something. We'd be able to serve our cause and move forward in our national plans.
The demonstrators sensed the dangers looming over the Palestinian cause due to the division which, in their view, surely benefits no one except the Israeli occupation.
Israel's interests lie in our division, in laying siege to us, and in breaking us apart. We must be aware that our national plans are in danger, and that this division is the pickaxe that will sabotage us and prevent us from attaining any national gains.
Initiatives that refute the state of division and separation were put in motion in the Gaza Strip. The organizers confirmed that these initiatives will continue in various forms until the division is ended. They called on supporters to pay more attention to the stalled reconciliation efforts while bearing responsibility in the wake of the big changes witnessed in the region and the feverish Israeli plans to put an end to the Palestinian cause.
Today, we want to tell all decision makers in the Palestinian area, no more division and no more concessions to the Israeli occupation, both in grabbing our land and in the Judaization of Jerusalem, without encountering any deterrent from political forces because of the divisive situation. Since we see them as the supporter of reconciliation efforts, we ask the new Egyptian leadership, headed by its new president, Brother Morsi, to put pressure on all Palestinian sides to resume applying the agreement, not just to reopen it.
After wasting years due to division and separation, what Palestinians are saying here is that Palestine must rise above its differences and factions. They demand both sides to promptly end their division and to unite in order to realize their large national plans, on which lie the destiny of the people and the future of their national cause. Mustafa Abdal Hadi, Al-Alam, Gaza, Palestine.
During a business and inspection trip leading him to the state of Steve, the Minister of Tourism and Handicrafts, Mohammed bin Maradi, stressed the importance of promoting traditional handicrafts and skills because they are a factor in tourism attraction. The minister also inspected new hotel foundations and other sites under construction yesterday.
In addition to being an important factor in preserving cultural heritage and knowledge and bequeathing it to future generations, traditional industries have several features that endorse local economies and employment, as well as being important attractions for tourists.
Tourists pay at least 100 to 150 euros for Algerian products. That's the minimum estimate.
And for this reason, the state recently paid great attention to these traditional industries to increase tourism. This was stressed by the Minister of Tourism and Handicrafts, Mohammed bin Maradi, during the opening of the National Exhibition of Traditional Clothing in Sétif. And because tourists are only met with high-class service facilities, the minister also inspected 2 hotels that have recently begun service. He stopped at the construction site of the Burj Al Ali compound and its various facilities.
Today in Algeria, the Algerian National Committee for Solidarity with the Sahrawi people and the African Commission on Human and People's Rights called on the United Nations to develop measures to protect and monitor human rights in the occupied lands in the Western Sahara. And during a press seminar that followed a meeting with the delegation, which was led by President Toki, the president of the Algerian National Committee for Solidarity with the Sahrawi people, Mahrez al-Amari, stated that the delegation of the African Committee for Human and People's Rights is in Algeria as part of a tour that would take it to the Sahrawi lands. After Bamako initially agreed with ECOWAS to the conditions of the deployment of African forces in northern Mali, the Malian defense minister stated that in the event of a deployment, the presence of these African forces will be in the capital, Bamako. The vice president of the ECOWAS Commission confirmed that communication between the two parties has reached the level where they are discussing the technical aspects of the process to deploy these forces.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic. Airwaves, a global channel of uncompromising stories, world news, documentaries, entertainment, and culture. Link TV, connecting you to the world. For more information, visit linktv.org.